So I wanted to give a talk tonight on right effort. And this is the third talk in a series that I've been doing on the Eightfold Path, and I've been working backwards. So usually we teach the Eightfold Path starting with right view and working all the way up to samadhi or collectedness. But this time I'm working backwards, and I find it helpful actually. I just want to give a quick overview for those of you who are like, what is the Eightfold Path? Or maybe just need a little refresher. But the Eightfold Path was essentially the Buddha's how-to manual, how to develop a peaceful mind. And it contains 8 elements. And each of them can be sort of improved or developed or cultivated. And as each one is cultivated, it leads almost naturally to the cultivation of the next one in the series. So they feed off each other. They're interrelated. The first one's right view, which is just understanding that the things you do matter, that they have consequences, that the way you exist in the world, treat other people, treat yourself, will have reverberations that will impact you. If you go around, right, being cruel and greedy and rough, your mind will be agitated and unhappy, and the world will start to respond to you poorly. So that's right view. It's an understanding of karma, cause and effect. Right? And the opposite, if you go around in the world generously, openly, lovingly, your mind will feel good, and the world, with time, will start to respond in ways that actually feel very good as well. And as we really start to see that, as we start to trust that that is true, and I would encourage you only to trust that that is true through your own observation, right? You don't need to take that as dogma. Just watch. But as you come to trust that that is true, that view leads naturally to right intention, right? If we come to believe that we have some measure of control over how things feel, right? That if we put good stuff out there, that we start to feel better, you will develop the intention quite naturally, right? To act in ways that are conducive to those positive feelings. And then that intention gets refined into 3 domains: how we speak, how we act, and the kind of work we do. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps to the Eightfold Path. And then there's this interesting turning point, which is where we're going to hone in tonight, but I'll come back to it, of right effort. Because as we're developing these first 5, what we come to realize is the mind's central role in all of this. That actually, to speak in such a way that we are speaking truthfully and lovingly and clearly and honestly requires a clear mind and a loving mind. And to act in ways that are gentle and thoughtful and patient requires a patient mind and a thoughtful mind. And to work a job that is in harmony with the needs of the community around us and our own internal skills and all of those different pieces, or to at least work a job that may not be perfectly aligned as best we can, that also requires the cultivation of certain mind states. So all of a sudden we realize that actually to do those external pieces, we need to pay a lot of attention to our mind state. And so the 6th part of the path is right effort. And it's this understanding that, I need to pay attention to my mind actually almost all the time. And that leads naturally to the cultivation of mindfulness, which is the awareness of our mind. What mind state is here now? What mind state is here now? What's the body doing right now? It's this moment by moment awareness of what is actually going on in here. Is there anger? Is there confusion? Is there fear? And then the last piece of the path is collectedness or samadhi. And my colleague Ellen just shared this word with me, collectedness. And it is, as I understand the Buddhist teachings, the best English word for samadhi. You often hear people say concentration, but I actually think collectedness is really on the money. It's this idea that the mind is kind of gathered, right? That the attention doesn't get jerked around, right? That it can be placed somewhere and stay there for a little bit. So a collected mind. And the ability to cultivate that collectedness, right? That's the crown jewel, because as that collectedness is cultivated, wisdom arises naturally. We start to see things more clearly, and you go back around the circle again. You get a finer sense of cause and effect. You get a better understanding of how to speak and act in the moment, right? And we have some good neurobiology for this too, right? We can now measure that collectedness in the mind. If any of you have ever used a Muse headset, these things actually work. Different sounds will come into your mind depending on how collected it is. And we can tell that when people are in that state of collectedness, they can access parts of their brain that are capable of logical reasoning, forethought, right? The prefrontal cortex becomes engaged. So we do, in fact, act with greater wisdom when we are collected. So there's the Eightfold Path. You start to see that things matter. You develop the intention to act differently. You bring it out into your lives. You realize that the mind is the central aspect of this whole process, and sort of decide to really focus there. You develop mindfulness. You develop collectedness. And there it is. This is the Buddha's recipe. And tonight I want to hone in on that concept of right effort. There was this time period, maybe 8, 9 years ago, when I had left a career in politics up in New York, left a relationship, and sort of knew that I wanted to do this kind of thing, teaching mindfulness, working in mental health, but needed the time to put all that in place. So I moved back to the DC area where I'm from, moved into a refurbished garage behind my mom's house at the age of 33 maybe. And I had this experience where I was standing at the door of that garage and in my mom's backyard, and it was very pretty. I think it was early spring, so there were some crocuses and things blooming, and kind of there's a nice view from her yard. And I thought, you're really doing it, Devin. Like you are, doing a very brave thing. You're moving in the right direction. This is an important change in your life. And, that internal voice, and I'm really proud of you. And the next day, after whatever job I was working at the time, I came home and I was standing in the same spot. I was looking at the same yard. And I thought, you are such a loser. You're 33 years old living with your mom in a garage. You have no decent way of making money and like only a vague idea of how you're going to pull this thing off. Same place, same life, completely different mind states. And the actions that arise from those mind states are wildly divergent. From that first mind state, right? Had my mom come walking out of the house, I likely would have said something nice to her, right? And from that second, probably not so much. This one gets brought into sharp relief in my daily life as a parent. Most of the time, in our current rhythm, and for those of you who've raised kids, you know the rhythms change every few months. But this rhythm right now, I do the bed bath routine most nights, not tonight because I'm here. And on nights when I am exhausted or have had a particularly emotionally intense day, I find the slow march up to the bath to be insufferable. I find myself barking at the children to get it together and get upstairs. And I find the splashing to be irritating, and I start thinking about how it's probably damaging the floors. And, I want to hustle them out of the tub. And there's this rigidity and tightness in me because the mind is tired and agitated. So everything that's coming out of me is flowing from that mind state. And when I've had a light day at work or a good night's sleep, I don't mind at all that they're taking their time. I play games with them, right? We have a nice chat in the tub. Oh, little water splashes. No big deal. I just wipe it up. It all feels so easy. And I had somebody ask me the other day, they said, do you subscribe to gentle parenting? And I said, sure, whenever I can manage it, right? It's not, I think, that most parents want to be kind of draconian jerks to their kids. I think it's that for a lot of us, we are in a mind state sometimes where things feel kind of hard and impossible. And one more delay or one more problem, right, or one more unmanageable mess feels unbearable. The mind is in such a state of fear and agitation that it can't, it has this narrative, it has this feeling that it just can't deal with that. And so what we start to learn is how important that mind state is. I have to know if I want to, right, develop the kind of good vibes in my household that will leave me feeling good so that I'm not lying in bed at night regretting what I said to my kids. Or putting all that stuff in them that then comes roaring back at me. There's nothing worse than hearing one of your children yell at your kid, another one of your children in a way that sounds a lot like you, right? It's a particularly horrible feeling. If I don't want to spread that around my household, I have to notice my mind state very closely. I have to know when I walk in the door and is this a night where I am tired and on edge, or a night where I have a lot of energy and reserves? And from there, really move carefully. And either way, I have to remember that eighth step in the path, which is to cultivate a little bit of collectedness. Can I notice my breath with 10 or 15% of my attention? So that if I'm in an angry, agitated state, I'm moving slowly enough that I have the wherewithal to say something like, honey, can you help me tonight? I don't really have it in me. Or, hey kids, let's skip bath tonight, right? Or let's take the easy way, right? Something that allows me to slow down enough to really sense my capacity and the needs of the situation and steer myself as best as I can through it in a gentle way. Or if I'm feeling great, can I have enough of that collectedness that I can stay present with the kids and just really enjoy that moment where I feel good and they feel good and we're all together, right? Rather than letting my energy pull me off in different directions or checking my phone or trying to do too much, right? So that collectedness is the special sauce. It's the secret ingredient that helps whatever the mind state is. So this is right effort. It's that turning point where we realize that actually we've been trying to fix our lives from the outside in, but the real way is to fix them from the inside out. We have to first know what the mind state is. Cultivate that little bit of collectedness in each moment, and then move out into the world with wisdom. Now, it is not what I like to call the inner guru, also known as piety. There's a lot of us who can get confused, and you come home and you're in a bad mood, and you're having thoughts like, boy, would it be nice to chuck the kids out the window. And the inner guru pipes in and says, you shouldn't be so mean. You should be really nice to your kids right now. Come on, why aren't you being nice, gentle with them? And you say, oh, kids, and you kind of plaster that smile on, right? There's a seething cauldron of rage inside of me, but I'm gonna smile at them and I'm gonna do the thing the parenting book said to do, you know, with tense shoulders and a tense smile, right? That is not it. It's not trying to wedge yourself into the idea of how the mind and body should feel in that moment. Or when somebody cuts you off, right, saying, you should have compassion for them. You know, maybe they're having a bad day. That can be a useful thought, but it can also be this kind of cudgel that we use to beat ourselves with that doesn't really work. Right? Right effort doesn't lead to the beginning of the circle. It leads to mindfulness, which is just, what is this mind state right now? So if somebody cuts you off and you're thinking they're a jerk, the next step is, oh, there's anger here. Oh, that's what anger's like. Can I bring a little bit of collectedness to this and figure out how I want to work with this anger? Do I need to say something? Do I need to keep my mouth shut? We don't have to be pious. We don't have to pretend not to be angry. We don't have to suddenly generate a bunch of compassionate, sweet thoughts, right? That's exhausting and it doesn't work, right? So right effort is not the sort of holier than thou inner guru. It's not dressing up to look peaceful, sort of wearing flowing linen pants when you come to a meditation class, because that's what it looks like, right? It's come as you are. And you know it's the inner guru because there's often a should. You should be like this, or you should sound like this. And it's kind of exhausting and it doesn't work. Those are the hallmarks of the inner guru. What right effort does look like is consistency. It's having the thought 100 times a day, what's the mind like right now? And where's the breath? What's the mind like? Where's the breath? What's the mind like? Where's the breath? From the minute the eyes flutter open in the morning, all the way through getting up, brushing their teeth, walking downstairs, what's the mind like? Where's the breath? If the mind's exhausted and spacey and confused, that's fine. Can you notice a little bit of a breath with an exhausted, spacey, confused mind? Can you notice the breath with an angry mind or a grumpy mind or a tired mind or a joyful mind? There's space for all of your different mind states. Plus a little bit of awareness of the breath. And this is right effort, this gentle, consistent question, what's the mind like right now? And can I find the breath? All day, a little bit all day. And then you start to notice patterns. Start to notice that maybe starting your day off one way, reading something that reminds you of this, or taking a walk outside, or being around certain people leads to that question being asked more often. And so then we start to naturally incline towards people and events that remind us of it, like this, right? You will all probably be a little more aware of your breath walking out of here than you were walking in here, just because you listen to me talk about it for half an hour, right? And so we start to gravitate towards things that remind us of this and help our minds cultivate it, and towards people who remind us of this and help our minds cultivate it. And we learn the environments that actually make mindfulness impossible. I talked about this a few weeks ago at St. Mark's. But mindfulness breaks down when there's extreme craving for pleasure or when there's extreme aversion to pain. At the tail ends of experience, it's very hard to stay mindful. And so we actually learn to avoid, as best we can, situations at that tail end. Because it's very, very hard to sustain mindfulness or concentration when there's tons of craving. I just came back from Disneyland, Disney World. There was so much on both of the tail ends, right? It was both painfully exhausting and overstimulating with pleasure all at once. Hard to sustain mindfulness. Now, I was glad I did it. My kids were happy. But generally speaking, that is not a place that I want to plant my flag, right? That is not going to lead to the cultivation of healthy mind states. So that's right effort. It's that pathway again and again back to mindfulness, back to collectedness throughout the day. And sort of a larger question of who are the people and what are the places and what are the ways of living my life that make it natural to keep that process going. And I'll pause there. Thoughts or questions? And if they're not coming now, that's fine. We'll do a little small group to warm things up and then come back. But any initial thoughts or questions? Yes.
What is it that gives rise to mind states? In my experience, I'm finding that it's usually a story that I'm telling myself about what might happen or don't want to happen or could happen. And the challenge for me with the mind states, as I'm understanding what you're saying, is not just to let go of the story. I mean, it's definitely to let go of the story, but to try to get in touch with the energy that's propelling the story and to investigate that, to be curious. So could you talk a little bit more about these mind states and where they come from and how to work with them?
Sure. So the question for those of you online is what gives rise to mind states and how do we work with them? Right. In some way, this is the field of psychology, right? And neuroscience, but so much gives right? The mind is a nonlinear dynamic system, right? Meaning that there are multiple factors, both internal and external, that are affecting the mind and creating a mind state in a given moment. So how much sleep you had, right? What medications you're on, who's in the room with you and what their mind state is, because humans are social creatures. So if somebody comes in here all anxious, our anxiety level is all going to go up a little bit. And if you're feeling anxious and you come around a calm person, your anxiety level is actually going to go down a little bit. The amount of physical pain you're in, chronic pain, has a tremendous effect on mind states. I mean, the myriad factors, right? The amount of sunlight, vitamin D in the system, micronutrients, diet, how much exercise we're having, the kind of health that our body's in overall. These are all factors that lead to mind states. And the Buddha actually, he gave a mixed set of instructions on this. And the way I would put them together is sort of watch it and study it, but be careful of getting over-determined, right? There is an extent to which we can learn a lot about our mind. I have learned that sleep makes me happier. I'm pretty sure about that one. But it is also true sometimes that I will not get a good night's sleep and have a great day. And it is also true that I will get a great night's sleep sometimes and have a real rotten day. So there are other factors. There is still a little bit of it that we will never fully understand or never fully capture. So we have to stay kind of open and flexible. I have a sense of some things that matter It helps me to get outside, right? It helps me to meditate. It helps me to be around people who bring out the best in me. And then some of it just seems to be a mystery. I couldn't tell you exactly why standing in that same spot 8 years ago, 2 consecutive days, my mind state had gone 180 degrees in the other direction. Things in my life had not changed that much. Who knows? Maybe I had some bad tuna for lunch. I had maybe some of you know Jonathan Faust. He's a wonderful meditation teacher in the area. But he used to say, is it trauma or is it gas? Right? When speaking about feelings in the body. And I love that. Some of this is a little bit mysterious, and you kind of have to use that word you use, be curious, right? And open-minded. I'm not sure what is going on in here. Is that helpful? Yeah. Other thoughts or questions? Maureen.
Just wanted to comment on how important it is to have, as much as you can, people, when you have the choice, people around you who are of like mind. It makes a huge difference. As soon as I had that sort of feeling in resonance with what you said, I realized that there's a lot of people who, I'm retired, so it's a little bit easier for me to do that. A lot easier for me to do that. People who have to go to a certain work environment and all that could be tough. So I don't know if you have any kind of advice or thoughts regarding when you can't control your environment as much as some people can.
Yeah. So the question for those of you online is just, when you realize that it's a lot easier to do this around like-minded people, it raises this question of, well, what about those of us who, for reasons related to maybe where we need to work or who our family members aren't always around people who are cultivating mindfulness and collectedness? Did I get that right? So the Buddha, I once said, somebody said, can nibbana, can sort of the complete realization of peace is it only available to monastics? And he said, no, absolutely not. But it's a lot easier for them, right? He said he used the analogy of they're more like traders who do a little bit of work and sometimes make a lot of money and sometimes lose money, but don't have to do so much work for it. And he said, and laity are like farmers who do a tremendous amount of work and sometimes make a lot of money and sometimes lose a lot of money, but have to work very hard, whatever they get. And so in a certain way, we're the farmers, right? We didn't choose a life that's completely structured around the cultivation of mindfulness and collectedness, right? Monks give up a tremendous amount for that life, right? But they prioritize it to such a degree that everything serves that aim. But that doesn't mean that laity can't achieve that same deep peace. It actually just takes a little more effort, right? There's more we have to think about. We have to figure out how to navigate the boss and the spouse and the kids who are resentful with us and the neighbors right? There's just more mental processing and more variables and more stuff to kind of sit through and invite that wisdom to arise. And there's just more muck to wade through in a certain way. But it's also rich. Those are all opportunities for awareness and understanding and learning about human beings. So it's not worse. There's nothing inherently worse about being a farmer than a trader. It's just a different kind of life. Is that helpful? Yeah. Jason. Oh, here, we'll do the mic. Yeah.
My question piggybacks off the first question, and you said it much better than me, but I find when I'm meditating, a lot of it is I'm telling myself a story, and when more story I'm telling, it's like slow it down, go back to my breath. So my question would be, able to turn that story off at some point. I'm gonna have to go back into the story. So how do I use what I've cultivated? I'm using this the right word, but how do I then go back in the reverse direction? What I'm doing when I'm meditating, I feel like I'm trying to go from less story to more being present, and then I'm gonna have to go back to the life.
Is the story like? Can you give me a little more context?
More like, when I'm sitting here, I'll veer off into what's going on in my life, and what I've learned from my meditation practice is it's about, okay, you've seen that, that's how you feel, that's what you're going through during the day. Meditating, you're trying to realize what's going on in your body and pay attention more to your breath and let that outside stuff go and focus on what's going on the inside. So then how do you then take that calmness that you've created here and go back to the stuff that's been distracting you?
Got it. Thank you. Did folks online get that? Somebody give me a thumbs up or a yes. It's just crickets out there.
Yes, got it.
Yes, great. They got it. So stories, especially the repeated stories, the ones that come again and again and again, are almost invariably fed by desires and needs. If there is a story that keeps coming up about why I'm not in the right relationship, or why I don't have a relationship, or why I'm not in the right job, or why I don't have a job, or why I'm not able to get rid of this chronic pain, all of those stories are fed by a want. We want something to be different. We want something to be better. And that's okay. But when you sit here in meditation and you come into your body and you really develop that strong collectedness, what you actually want to do is bring that collectedness to the place in your body where you are holding that want, that deep desire. So to use a concrete example, I went on a meditation retreat about 2 years ago, and I found myself ruminating a lot about my children. And I got in there and I felt this desire to just, to put it plainly, be nicer to them. And when I found that knot right down here that was feeding all that mental activity, it was a knot. I started sobbing because I could feel the intensity of that desire, and bringing that mindfulness, bringing that collectedness to it, actually almost let it move through me. I just really recognized how badly I wanted this and how sad I was that I had not been able to do it to the degree that I wanted it to. And so often grief is the sign that we've met that desire with sort of mindfulness and awareness, that loving compassion, and it releases it. And so the desire is still there, but now it's in our consciousness. And instead of kind of ruminating, we've actually hit on the thing that we most want, and there's a clarity that we can move with. It's like, oh, this isn't how I wanted it to be. And that sucks. And it feels really bad. And now that I've actually let myself fully feel the pain of that, I can move forward in a different way. And the thoughts, they change. It's remarkable in my work as a psychotherapist how identifiable that moment is with somebody. When they've been ruminating and ruminating and they've told me something a handful of times, and then there's often a moment where they can just name, I just wanted it different. I didn't want it to be this way. I didn't want that person to be that way. And they really, you can see them sort of feel the pain of it. It hurts. But the story shifts, because once they've let themselves fully feel that embodied pain, then the mind's not kind of spinning around it anymore. Does that make sense? So that's how the practice kind of moves in and then moves out. And in classic Buddhist teachings, for those of you who are more on that end, this is uprooting work. You're uprooting, right? You're getting down to where these things are planted in you, and you're releasing them.
And so then in that process of getting down to where those things are embodied.
Yeah.
It's just going back to it, going back to it.
Yeah. With time as you meditate, that collectedness will grow. You're starting here with 10, 15%. You take a week-long retreat, it'll get up to 80 or 90%. The mind is very collected, right? It's like a still bowl of water. And when you bring that level of connectedness down into your body, you start noticing and feeling a lot of things. And stuff starts moving through you and releasing and processing. You know, we did a 3-day retreat last March, and even in 3 days, there were, by the second day, you would hear people sort of softly sobbing through meditation sessions, right? They're just hitting those spots where they're kind of clenched around something. Yeah. And that's what therapy's for. You get double the mindfulness and samadhi. There's somebody else reflecting that back to you and inviting you into those places, right? So it's really nice to have somebody kind of guiding you. And I promise that's not a business pitch. Jason and I went to high school together, so he keeps me honest. But yeah, both of these processes are sort of trying to get you into the same place.
But does it matter if the change that you're looking for there is possible or not?
Sorry, can you here? Yeah, the mic.
Matter if the change is feasible or not, but feasible or not, does it make any difference?
Not always, no. There are plenty of things that we want that actually, when we grieve them, what we get is acceptance. It's never going to happen. You can never have a better childhood. That ship has sailed, right? And so sometimes when we grieve the childhood that we will live decades past it still wanting a different one. And at the end of the grief, what we get to is it was what it was. But that feels way better, and and the rumination really starts to ease up. Right? Now there are other cases where we hit the grief and we realize actually I can move forward with this thing. I've been so scared of how much I want it that actually now that I've let myself feel the intensity of that, I'm willing to go try to do it. Or I'm capable of thinking about it in a creative way because I'm not so bottled up. So yeah, there often it sort of leads to that, the serenity prayer, right? Let me accept what can't be changed and have the courage to change the things I can. And samadhi, of course, gives us the wisdom to know the difference.